Hey everybody, Rob Hogue here, Bass Stalker Fishing. I want to do a quick tip for you today, and it's going to be on what line to use when throwing your lipped hard baits, whether it's your jerk baits or your crankbaits. And it doesn't matter what kind of crankbait. It could be deep diving, shallow running, it doesn't matter. But I'm going to start by telling you what lines you shouldn't throw those baits with. Number one off the bat is braid. That's never going to be a good choice for crankbaits and your jerk baits, because there's no stretch. I mean, braid, if you're pulling, that bait's pulling, and the hooks on your crankbaits and your jerk baits are normally a lot lighter wire hooks. It's not like your worm hooks or your jig hooks, and the power of your hook set, even though you might have a crankbait rod, is gonna straighten those hooks out. It might not straighten them out all the time, but you're gonna risk straightening the hooks out and losing that fish. So that should be off the table immediately. The second line type is your monofilaments or your copolymers, and I don't like those lines for throwing these baits for the opposite reason. I think there's too much stretch in those lines, and especially with jerk baits, when you're giving the jerks to the bait, that line's absorbing so much of that rod movement that you're really limiting the action of your jerk bait. And also, secondly, with those lines, they float. So you might be throwing a crankbait that says it goes down 15 feet, and because the bass are sitting in about 12 foot of water, and you want to grind that bait on the ground. But because you're throwing the monofilament, the floating line, it might only dive 9-10 feet. So you're not really getting the bait down to your target area. What I like to use is fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon sinks, it's very nick resistant, and it does have stretch, but it has nowhere near the stretch of monofilament or copolymer lines. And you mix the forgiveness of the rod when you're throwing a crankbait rod, or like the medium action jerkbait rod, mixed with a little bit of stretch of the fluorocarbon. It's enough stretch to where you're not straightening the hooks, but it's not too much stretch where you're hindering the action of the bait. And it's still, because it sinks, it's getting the bait down where it's supposed to go. A lot of getting the depth right of the bait has to do with your line size. If a bait says it goes down 15 feet, it's probably going to go down 15 feet on 8-pound test line. I always have two crankbait rods set up. One has 15-pound test fluorocarbon, the other one has 10 or 12-pound test fluorocarbon. And since I'm aware of how the fluorocarbon affects the crankbaits, I know about how far my crankbaits are going to dive. So hope this helps you out. When it comes to my fluorocarbon, I like P-Line 100% fluorocarbon. I've told you guys before, I use P-Line for everything. I love the quality of that brand. They are kind of hard to find. I was at Gander Mountain last weekend, and they had one type of P-Line, and it wasn't what I needed. So, but a great place to get your P-Line. They have every size, every type of line P-Line makes is tacklewarehouse.com. And if you spend over $50, you get free shipping, so you can't beat it. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you later.